Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the Ultimate Advanced Filters Training through VBA. We're going to cover a lot, including text-based filters. We're going to cover date-based filters as well as number filters, and we're going to show you how to clear that and a brand new way to minimize code through another type of data mapping. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining us. We've got a lot to cover today in today's training. We bring these brand new trainings to you each and every Tuesday. So, of course, if you have not yet subscribed, I urge you to do so. Click on the subscription below button and make sure you click notifications. That way you're going to be notified each and every Tuesday as I bring these brand new and free trainings to you every week through YouTube, Facebook, and other social media. All right, let's get started. Today, I want to cover Ultimate Advanced Filters. Now, we've covered advanced filters before, but I want to zero down and show you exactly how we do advanced filters and how you can create these advanced filters in your applications through an amazing training where we're going to minimize the VBA program, maximize the features that we get. In fact, we're going to show you how to search by any name, any field. We're also going to show you how to search by specific fields. So we're going to show you both the and the or training filters. We're also going to cover how to filter by date so you can specifically, and I know a lot of you have issues on filtering by date, so we're going to show you exactly how you can filter by specific dates very quickly, very easily, without issues, regardless of the machine, regardless of the date format. So we're going to show you special ways because a lot of you have had issues with date formats in the past. So I'm going to show you how to do that very simply through VBA, through some very simple formula, regardless of what machine, regardless of the computer, regardless of the date format, regardless of your regional settings. And we're also going to cover how to handle these advanced filters. And so there's a really easy VBA, so it's going to be a very easy training. This is a great training for if you're just getting started with VBA. I'm going to go very slowly. There's not a whole lot of complex VBA in this, so it's a great training. For those of you that have just a little bit of VBA experience, I'm going to walk through every step, and of course, we're going to show you how to clear those filters with a button. So there's a very little bit of VBA, so this is a great training for those people just getting started. All right, let's get to it. The first and most important thing you want when you're configuring your file is to make sure that the sheet that the viewer is seeing, the user, is not your original database. This is really helpful. So we have our original data right here in what's called a customer database, customer list. This is our original data. So basically the idea is to take this data, run it through some filters, run it through what we also call known as criteria, and here's the criteria here. Run it through the criteria, get our results, so all of our results will appear here, take those results and bring them into the customer list. But of course, we'll clear this customer list, so you'd want to clear the list out, and then you run your advanced filter. Once you run your advanced filter, you can then have the results brought back in so that the results will come from here. And why do we do this? Well, we do this for several reasons. One, we want to protect our original data. We don't want to give the user often the ability, it's very easy to delete original data, so we want to keep our original data intact. Number two, we want to have the ability to sort and filter our data very easily without necessarily hiding rows or hiding things, because we may have other things around the table that we don't want to hide. So this gives us the feature that we don't have to hide the data, we just clear our table and we bring the data in from the results. So that's another reason. Another reason is in a multi-user environment. I have trainings on this. What does that mean, multi-user environment? That means you have multiple users using the same data, separating the front end, which is this, from the back end, which is this, allows the user to work with that so that only the original data is shared among users. And that means the front end users, they can do whatever they want and it's not going to affect the other users. So there's really critical, important users. So getting in the habit of separating your front end data gives you a lot more flexibility in how we work with the data. So it's really important. So first idea is separate the back end here from the front end. Okay, so we have that covered. Next up, what I want to do is I want to be able to add different types of filters in here. For example, I may want to search both the last name and the first name for a specific. So for example, if I want to search DA, I want to know every first name, every last name where DA is contained. So that will search. But if I only want to search first names, DA, it's in fact this one's going to be the same, but let's say I want to search a last name DA, so then it's going to only give us our last first name here. First name is David, so it's only going to give us our last names. So we have a lot of flexibility. I want to show you how to perform these two types of searches: text based on multiple fields or text based on a single column or a single field. So I want to show you that, as well as we want to be able to search dates. Now dates are tricky, and dates are also tricky with times too. So we're going to show you not only how to filter dates that are by itself, but how to filter dates with times, because times can be a little bit tricky. So we're going to go into that as well. And of course, amounts and numbers. So this feature will show us all. Now let's get right into it with the dates. Now the issue that we have with advanced filters and dates and VBA is that when we place a specific date in a field, let's say we're searching by, let's put a date in here. Let's do August 1st. Okay, so we're going to filter by August 1st, and that means from August 1st. If I were to take this date and place it directly through VBA right here, this particular last payment, this is the criteria. If I were to place it directly, you'll see it's a formula, but if I were to place it directly, the formats can create major problems, because if your results format is different than your data format and dates, and depending upon your format, it could create a lot of problems, especially with different regional settings, different systems, different countries. However, when we bring that date into the original number 43678, we lose all of the issues that are associated with date formats, because we're bringing it down to the number. For example, 43678. If we look at it, 43678, that's just a number. But when we change that to a date format, we'll see that it is August 1st. All we have to do, August 1st, 2009. So remember, the dates in Excel are actually a number. So that's important. So when we bring it down to its number, we don't have any more issues with date formats. So what we want to do is we want to create a formula that's constant. This formula doesn't change. However, what if it's nothing? What if it's nothing? In this case, I want to make sure that if we've cleared out the date, I want all dates. So we want to start it with 0 if it's all dates, okay? And from 2 dates, we want a high number. Let's say the user has not entered any specific date. We want to make sure that it's a very, very high number. So keep that in mind. Let's look at that. Let's look at the formula. Now we're going to go over why there's 2 rows of formula, not just one, okay? So our first formula is last payment. This I want greater than. Notice we have 2 last payments. One we're going to use for greater than, and one we're going to use for less than. Greater than and less than. So this particular formula is tied to L7. If we look here, L7 is the from date. These 2 formulas are exactly the same. This formula here, last payment, this is based on L8. This is the to date, L8, okay? So it's gonna simply linked. If there's something other than blank, if there's something other than to date, then I wanna show the date. And that's just what we've translated inside a formula. Here, let's take a look at this one. If, or I'll zoom that in, or customer list L7 equals from date in the colon, if it's that, or if it's blank, then what do we want? Then I want greater than 0. That means any date greater than 0. Remember, greater than 0 would be 0 dates, so that would be obviously the earliest possible date. So because we're turning it into numerical, so it's very important, greater than 0. So that's very important. Otherwise, that means it's not blank and it doesn't say from date. Then what I want to do is I want to add greater than or equals and the actual date. So as soon as we put a date into L7, August 1st, as soon as we put a date in there, it's going to change that. and I put the same formula here, the same exact formula. Why is that? Because this second row is used when we use the or comment. Or, why? When do we use the or? Because in this, I want to know first name or last name. First name or last name. So when we clear the filter and we put in FR Fred and we run the filter, now we're looking for a last name that contains Fred or a first name that contains Fred. For example, this last name doesn't contain Fred, but the first name does. So we want to return results with either the last name or the first name. And to do that, we need to use the or command. And when we use the or, it's the last name or the first name. So we've put them in two just to show you here the last name of there, and the second row would be tied. If we were to put Fred right here, we would be and, right? So let's take a look at this. Let's clear the filter, and let's just put in Fred. This is not going to return any results. Okay, so Fred, this would be with a last name of Fred and a first name of Fred. So if we look at that, we'll see we have last name of Fred and the first name of Fred. So that's not what we want. Okay, we want to make sure that when we have both, we've cleared the filter. We want or, so it's got to be in the top line and the bottom line, here and here. So when we enter that, because it's an or command, either one. So let's take a quick look back at that. So we want in here, we want or last name of Fred or first name of Fred. So we got the or command here. And in this case for dates, we want and. So we want a last payment of greater than and less than. So let's put in a filter. Let's add a filter. Let's add in from date August 1st and to date, I guess 9/1, which would be, okay, so this is just one return. So now we have a search based on either a last name or a first name that contains Fred and a last payment on that is equal to or greater than August 1st and less than or equal to September 1st. So there's returning just one record. So we see here we have the dates now filled out. We're using, so the actual criteria is going to use all of this. It's going to start at M2 and it's going to end at AB4. Why 2 rows? Because we're using the OR command. We use the OR command, and if you have more ORs, you're going to use more rows. Or this, or this, or this. OR goes vertical and it goes horizontally. Remember that. OR is vertical and is horizontally. When we run advanced filters, when we run that in VBA, the and, we need and. So if we have more ands, we're going to keep going vertically. You can add as many as you want as long as the header names are the same as the original database. Remember, these header names, if we were to change just one, it very well could create a bug. So we want to make sure that these header names are the same header names in our original database. So that's very important. We want to make sure those names or text are exactly as they're typed out in our headers. Okay, moving along. So we understand or when we want to return either this or this, and then we want dates that are greater than August 1st and less than or equal to last payment. Okay, but why isn't this, for example, why isn't this specifically less than or equal to? Why is that? Well, if you understand this, let's take a look at the times here. This is August 12th. So if I wanted, let's just say 8/12, right? I want to make sure to include this. But how can we do that? Why do we have a problem? Why could this potentially be a problem for you? It works, but why is it a problem? Let's take a look at this. I'm looking for something that's less than or equal to August 12th. But this is August 12th at 6 a.m. If we look at that, let's take a look at the value of that. Equals, I want to look at the numerical value of that. So I'm going to change that to a number format, home, and then we'll go to a general and we'll look at that. It's 4-3. And now let's look at the format of this, August 12th, just the date by itself, and bring that to a number formula, general. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to find out any dates that are less than or equal to this, August 12th, less than or equal to August 12th, right? But if you look at this, August 12th at 6 a.m. is actually greater. It's actually greater. That could cause an issue, right? 43689.25 is actually greater than 43. So if we don't make an adjustment in the formula, that could cause an issue, right? So what do I want? What I really want is less than August 13th. I really want less than August 13th. What is August 13th? We can write it here. 8/13. Okay, so what is that? At 12 a.m. That's really what I want because it's just the date. We can actually, let's put it here so there's no time at all because this is not time. 8/13, okay? So what I really want is less than this. So if we equals this, August 13th. So what I really want is not equal to August 13th, but less than August 13th. If we use less than August 13th, that's going to encompass every single time within August 12th. So we do just that. What I want to do is I want to take this date, I want to add 1 to it, and then use less than, but not less than or equal to. So that's what I did in the formula. So here we have the last payment date here. So as long as it contains a date and contains 2 dates, then what do I want to do? I want to take L8 and I want to add 1, and then I want to make it less than. So that way it encompasses all the times because the times add value. So that's how we work with times. When we have date and times together, it's very important that we increase it because if I just use less than or equal to, it's not going to work. Let's clear that out. If I were to take out this 1, it would not encompass August 12th because it would be less than or equal to August 12th. So it's important when you're dealing with times, remember there's a decimal format, so you want to make sure that you add or subtract a day accordingly. Just keep that in mind. Now, the invoice date doesn't contain time, so we can use the less than or equal to because it doesn't contain any times, which is fine, less than or equal to. But remember, if you're working with dates that include times, make sure you account for the decimal after. You can also use the integer feature. Let's say you want to just get the date alone. So if we were to pull this and we just need only, let's format this back into a number. So here, general. Okay, so we see, but now what if we just want the date alone? We can use integer, int, and then we want just the number alone. If we just want the date, we can do that. That will extract our date from our time. So when we format this back into a date, in fact, if we do the short date, we can know that, for example, is only the date and it takes out the time. That's how we take the date. That's how we take the time out of the date. So we can use the integer feature to do just that. All right, so there's some workarounds of how we're working with dates and times. And so the beauty of this is that we don't need VBA to help us out with the criteria when it comes to dates. VBA only helps us with the text and the numbers. But when it comes to date, we're going to use formulas for that. So these remain constant. And the reason we've used 2 rows is when we have an OR value, we need to use both rows. When we only have 1, we can just use the first. So when we use and, let's do Fred here again. So when we use this, we can do just 1 row. It's fine. That's fine. No problem. We don't need that. Even though it's on 2 rows, it's just helpful in case we have that, in case we have it, but we don't need it. It's just there in case we use it, but we only need the first row. But keep in mind that when we have OR, then we do absolutely need to use both of these rows, okay? And I'm going to show you that in VBA, but first I wanted to walk you through it, how it works manually, and so we can see that. And so let's just take a look at another manual, data. When we look at the data and we look at advanced filter manually, this is what it looks like. We're going to copy to another location. What are we? We're going to list the range. This is our original range. It's going to encompass, remember, it's going to include our header, always include our header, and the last row of data. Now in VBA, we're going to make that last row dynamic so that as your data grows, so does your advanced filter. And what is our criteria range? Our criteria range in this case is going to be M2 through AB4. Remember, we want to encompass both of those, so that's very important, both of those, or Fred as the last name or Fred as a first name, and that's of course within it contains, we've added those asterisks before and after through VBA, so that means it contains Fred. It may not start with Fred, it may not end with Fred, but it contains Fred. That's what we want to do. And what do we want to copy to? We want to copy to this range, and we must list the headers, and that would be AD2 through AN2. And unique records, we're going to leave that empty. So that is how it looks like when we don't use VBA, if we're just going to run the manual filter. But of course, I'm going to show you how to do it VBA so that we can do it simply by changing a value here within this. It's very, very simple. So all we have to do is just simply enter some text, and it's going to filter it out, and it's going to use that, of course, and so you'll see now that we have MA is brought into this, and we're going to use 2 different rows for that. So that's how we're going to do that, and so automatically VBA will handle our text values. We're going to keep our formulas to use for our dates, and then of course we're going to also use that. So if we were to have additional fields, it's very easy to add, and we're going to show you how we do that through data mapping as well. All right, let's get into the VBA and see just how we made this action happen, on how we changed it. Under the Developers tab, if you don't have the Developers tab visible, you can go into your file and go into the options and look under your Customize ribbon and make sure that you've selected the Developers tab here. All right, you can also use Alt F11 to get into that. Here we go into the Visual Basic. And now we have some VBA. There's no VBA on our customer database. We only have some on our customer list. And you'll notice that all of the VBA that we have is based on worksheet change. And what does this mean? This means when the user actually makes a change to one of the cells within the sheet. Nothing is under selection change. In fact, we can remove it. Selection change would be if we're making a selection, but that's it. We're not doing any. We're only actually making a change. First of all, we have this one, which helps us remove bugs. If target.countLarge is greater than 1, then exit the sub. That means if the user changes data to a large number of cells, it's not going to create that. If we were to have that, if we don't have that, it could create bugs when we make changes to large numbers of cells. All right, so the first thing what I want to do is I want to know if the user makes any kind of a change between cells D7 and N8, then do something. What is that? Well, D7 is the first cell in our range, in our filters. If they make a change to D7 all the way to N8, if they make a change to any cell in that range, then I want something to happen. So that's the first code that we've written. So we've done just that. If not intersection is nothing. Now when you see not and nothing together, they cancel each other out. So it's a little bit confusing. Just remember, when you see not and nothing, you can cancel. It's a double negative and you can cancel those out. So basically what we're telling VBA is if the user makes a change between D7 and N8, then do something. And what is that something? And the something is all of this. All between the if and the end if. This is all we want to do. The first thing I want to do is I want to know if the kind of a change, there's a few different kinds of changes. When I delete something here and I want to add that back in, I'm going to use clear filter and I'll show you how we do that, but it's going to add this name, enter a name back into it. But this kind of change, if VBA makes the change where we're entering this default text, I don't want it to do anything. I only want something to happen when we enter, the user enters, but not when we clear the filter. So how do we distinguish between when a user makes a change and when VBA is making a change? Well, when VBA makes a change, there's something specific to every single cell. And what is that? Every single cell contains this colon when VBA makes a change, right? If you look at this, every single cell contains that colon. In fact, I got interstate. I'll show you what that SST. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be actually taking this default text here, and I'll show you, and just bringing it over here. So you'll see when we see how SST is spelled wrong, when we clear the filter, it's going to correct it because I've already corrected it here. So it's just bringing that default text. But if you notice on this default text, every single one contains a colon. So that's how we can differentiate. So basically what I want to say to VBA is if the change that is being made contains a colon, then ignore it. Then don't run a filter. Basically, I'm saying don't run a filter if one is blank. Okay, if it's blank, don't run a filter. And if two, if it contains a colon, also don't run a filter, because that's resetting it back to the default name. So we don't want to run a filter. So we have to run a test in VBA to see if the text contains a colon. And if it does, ignore it. If it doesn't contain a colon, then don't ignore it. Then run the filter. And that's just how we do that with our in-string command. In-string command right here. If in string of whatever the value we've changed, right, whatever changed the target value, means the value that if it contains a colon, right, this would probably be 1 or 2 or however many colons it's found, right, however many it's found, it would be here. But if it's 0, that means it does not contain a colon. If it's 0, then we continue on. So that's all of this. So we're going to add this also caveat to make sure that it does not contain a colon, but before we continue with our filter macros, before we continue moving that. All right, so we need to check to make sure that the text does not contain a colon, and it's because that's added when we clear the filter. All right, so we know why. The first thing we want to do is I want to search for the first and last name. If the user makes a change to D7, we want something to happen, right? If the change is to D7, I want something to happen. So what is that? Oh, no backslash. Okay, so what is that change? If that change, then I want to run a filter, but what do I want to do? I want to take this value, whatever they've entered, and I want to place it right here, and I want to place it right here. But before I place it, I want to add the asterisk before and after. That's the wild card. What that's going to do is tell Excel and VBA that means any text before or after Fred, return those results. In either the last name or the first name. So that way we can return names like Fredding or Fredson or Fredders. So that way we can return any name that contains the word Fred, and it is not case sensitive as well. All right, so continuing on. So what I want to do is I want to tell VBA, but take whatever values here and place it in M3 and N4 and add asterisk before and after. So that's exactly what we do in VBA. If the user makes a change to D7, then what? Sheet 2, right? Sheet 2, of course, is our database. We would say M3 equals star target value and same with N3. That's just what we did here. Sheet 2, M3 and N4, both of those cells should contain what? The asterisk and the target value and another asterisk. That's how we can get both of those values in that cell. And then end. And then there's nothing else to do because it's not going to be target this, it's not going to be target this, right? These targets are there. Then we're going to run the macro. The next thing to do is run the macro. These are all based on other target cells, but they're only changing D7, so this would be ignored, this would be ignored, and this would be ignored because those are not the targets. Then we're going to run the macro. And what is this macro? This is the macro that runs our macros. It's right here, run filter. It's a very simple macro. We're going to go into that, but I want to stay consistent on where we are. So if we know what happens to D7 and then the macro to filter is going to run. But what if it's other text filters? What if it's D8 through I8 or K8? All right, actually it should be just D8 through I8. So what if it's D8 through I8? What is that? Well, let's take a look at that. That is right here, D8 through I8. That is all the other text filters. Zip codes, we can use text as well. So that's simply these. If it's this, then do something. What do we want to do? Well, then I want to change basically this, or this. I want to add that in. So let's take a look at what that might look like. Let's clear the filter, and we'll just add MA in here. And so we return 2 results. And so what does that do? It's going to put MA right here in both 03 and 04. Now, what if it's city? If we were adding a city, let's say we want to add a different filter, AN, and that's going to be both again. Los Angeles and San Diego both contain AN, they both contain there. If we were to add just one little filter like ANG, it's going to return just Los Angeles. All right, so what happens with it? Then I want to put ANG in both of the cities. So how do we do that? How do we do that with just a little bit of code? Well, what do I know? I know that whatever value the user puts in F8, I want to take that value and I want to put it in 03 and 04. What about if the user makes a change to G8? I know that I want to put that value right here in P3 and P4. Well, it's kind of like data mapping, right? We know if we're going to make a change here, we know we need to change O3, O4. And we know that if we make a change here, we're going to change P3, P4. So what if we were to map those fields? Well, I did just that. Let's take a look at what kind of mapping I did. And I'm going to highlight these. I'm going to change the font color because it's hidden right now. And you'll see right away that I've done some data mapping. If we make a change to here, I need to look and see O3 and O4. If we make a change to here, I know P3, P4. If we make a change Q3, Q4. Why state? Because state's going to be right here, Q3, Q4. That's data mapping. And why do we do that? It's not absolutely necessary, but it lessens the code, right? We can reduce the amount of code that we write when we do things like data mapping. Let's move this over so we can see M3, M4 for the first name. M3, M4. So you get the idea. It's just going to map these cells right here, going to map them here, and it's going to map them here. We don't need any mapping for our date values because that's already based on the formula. So for dates, we don't need any date. We don't need any data mapping for our dates because it's already run through the formula. We need it for the rest of them. So great. So we know that. Now all we need to do is take the target column, move 1, 2, 3, 4 rows up to get that, and 5 rows up to get that. So 4 and 5 rows above whatever they've changed. We're going to take whatever values are here. We're going to figure out what cell, because that's what the value is, and whatever cell is there, inside that cell, we're going to place the target value. Inside that cell, O3, we're going to place the target value. Plus, of course, we're going to add the asterisk before and after. Inside that cell, O4, we're going to place, again, the target value, adding, of course, the asterisk before, the wildcards before and after. So we can do that just in the data mapping. So let's take a look at how we do that within VBA. So if the user makes a change between D8 and I8, again, taking a look, if the user makes a change between D8 and I8, then do something. What are we going to do? We are going to make a change to sheet 2, right? Because we want to make a change here. We want to add a value here and here. But how do we know what cells to add it in? Well, we know because O3 and O4 are directly above it. How far above it? 1, 2, 3, 4 rows and 5 rows above it. So we can use that using the offset. So sheet 2 range, what is the target offset? What is this value right here? Target offset 4 rows less, 0 columns, no column difference, not the column to the left, not the column to the right, but the exact column, and 4 rows up. 4 rows up. What is this value? Let's look at that. Here's our target. No columns to the left, no columns to the right. But we're going to move 4 rows up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take this value. Now we know that value is O4. So if that value is O4, the range of O4 on sheet 2, the range of O4 on sheet 2 should be the target value. The range, sheet 2, range O4 value equals asterisk, wildcard, and the target value and asterisk. And we do the same thing on sheet 2, the offset, except 1 row above. In this case, target offset minus 5 row, 5 rows up above the target. We're going to put the same thing. And of course, you could also do a comma and do that, but I wanted to separate it into 2 so you could easily see that. So again, back into there. This time it's O3. So in this case, O3 is going to have our target value with the asterisk. So we do the same thing regardless of this. Puts that criteria in the right place based on the target value. If we were to add a state in here, same thing. It would do in Q3. And what's that going to do? Q3 and Q4 of sheet 2 is now going to contain state with the asterisk. Q3, Q4 is going to contain state with the asterisk. So we do that in VBA, and all it takes is just these few lines of code. You see how easy that is? Then we just run the filter. Then we all run the filter. And of course, I'll go over that macro. And now, these are all our text-based filters. Text-based filters are, of course, going to contain the asterisk before and after. Now, if you want an exact match, you would just remove these asterisks. Okay. Sometimes we want to do exact matches. In that case, remove the wildcards before and after your text value, and it's going to get you an exact match. All right, great. So now we understand how to run text-based filters, but how do we run number-based filters where we have less than and greater than? Let's clear our filters out. And now what we have is I want to know, let's say we have a number filter here from, let's say this is 4. So I want all the number of payments from 4 and greater. But in this case, we know we're going to affect A3 and perhaps AB3. But what is going to be in A3? A3 is 1, 2, 3, 4 rows up. What do we want? I want something that's greater than or equal to 4, greater than, because it's a from. So how do we get that? Number of payments greater than or equal to 4, and that's going to go in AA3. And if you'll see, if we look 1, 2, 3, 4 rows up, it's AA3. Well, now what if I want only numbers with 4 payments? I would put a 4 in here, so that's exact matches. Now I have anything that's greater than or equal to 4, anything that's less than or equal to 4. So you could probably imagine what we're going to put in AB3. We're going to put in less than or equal to 4 into AB3. And that's just what we have done here. Into AB3, less than or equal to 4. So now we've mapped out and we've done that. So with our number filters, we have just a slightly different code. Where are our numbers located? Well, our numbers are located either in K7, M7, or N7. For our greater than, let's look at that just so we know. Greater than, we can use these for the invoice amount, K7, balance amount, M7, and N7 for the number of payments. Those are all numbers. Invoice amounts, balance is an amount, but also a number. Payments is also a number. So for those, greater than. And then, of course, for our less than to amount, less than or equal to would be K8, would be M8, and would be N8. All right, so those 3 get the less than or equal. So we just separated those out. So the only difference here is for run greater than number filters, and that will include K7, M7, or M7. Then what do we want to do? I want to take the offset 4 rows up, whatever cell is right here. I want to put the value of whatever the user has typed in, but I want to first add greater than, and then the target value. So, and then of course the less than, for the less than or number values, what do we want to do? That would of course be K8, M8. In that case, I want to put less than the target value in whatever's in that cell. So that's how we get that. So for example, now I want to know what, let's say I want to from $250. That's going to, now what's that going to do? It's going to take our invoice, going to filter out greater than or equal to 250. So we go back in here, we see the invoice amount in U3. Why is it U3? Because when we go 4 rows up, 1, 2, 3, 4, we see U3. That is the mapped cell. So greater than, we know it's greater than because it's up here. It's on the top row, which is here in 7. We know greater than or equal to whatever is in K7, greater than or equal to 250. So now we have our filter greater than equal. So now we can filter out amounts very easily. So it's a really, really powerful way. So the same thing. So now we understand how we add the less than, how we add the greater. So now we understand all of how we get the values into our criteria here. So we understand that, but how do we actually run the macro? The macro is actually quite simple because we've done our homework, because we've done mapping, we've organized this in such a way that it's a really easy macro. So let's go into the run filter, and that run filter is right here. It's under the filter macros. We really have 2 macros, one called run filter and one called clear filter. Very, very simple macros. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is dimension. We need to know the last row, the last criteria row, and the last results row. What are those? Okay, so let's take a look at those dimensions. The first thing I want to know is if we're going to be running an advanced filter, I need to know the last row of the data, right? We're going to run an advanced filter on all of our original data, so I need to get the last row. In this case, it's 17, so we need to define that into a variable. I also want to know the last criteria row. Why is this? Because sometimes the criteria is going to only be the last row is going to be 3. Sometimes it's going to be 4. Why is that? Well, if the user runs a filter where only they're using one name, right? In this case, I don't need the 2 rows. I only need it to end at Fred, right? Even though I've put it twice here in the VBA, we only need it once, twice in some cases. Right? So I only need to know the last row, in this case is 3. So how do we know it? Well, if this is blank, we know the last row can be 3, but if it's not blank, it should be 4. When is it not blank? When we're going to search and. When we use and, we're going to make sure that in this case, we need to use the criteria all the way down to row 4. So I need to define whether it's row 4 or row 3 into a variable, and that's going to be called the last criteria row. Last criteria is going to be the 3 if we're using the and, or if it's the or feature, we're going to be using the variable of the fourth row. So we need to define that in a variable. All right, what other variable do we need? I need to know the last results row. What is the last row of the results? Why is this important? Because I want to know how much data to bring over, to copy over. In this case, it is 5, but it's going to be variable depending upon the results. So we need to know the last results row, and I'm going to bring that over and bring it over right here. Also keep in mind one other thing. Our results row starts in row 3 here. Our results row starts in row 9 here. So keep that in mind. We're going to be adding 6 at some point within the code. Okay, so we understand we got 3 different variables. Last row is our main data row. The last criteria row is going to be either 3 or 4 based on whether it's an and or comparison. And then our last results row so we can bring over the results data. The first thing I want to do is make sure to clear out any data in our existing table. Once we run a filter, I want to make sure that our data, our filter data is all cleared out, right? We want to clear that out first so we can bring in the new data. So that's very important. So we want to clear out all the way from D9 all the way to N and whatever the last row is. Okay, we can just use a large row. That'll work as well too. So D and 9, you can make this a dynamic, and then you could also add that in, or you can add large rows. Either way, it should encompass all the data, all the filter data in your results. So we need to clear any existing results, and that's of course on sheet 1. Next up, we're going to be primarily working with sheet 2. So that we need to say with sheet 2. Now we don't have to define sheet 2 anymore until we come after the end with. All right, next up, what I want to know if the user has actually entered a filter, and I'm going to make a small adjustment on that. So what I want to know is if this does not include enter any name, then I want to change the row. So let's just make that adjustment. It's a little bit more specific. What is that if sheet1.range, what is the range? D7 dot value does not equal, and then we're going to put in that specific text, enter any name does not equal enter any name, then the last criteria row is 4. Otherwise, so what's that going to do? It's going to say if there's something other than enter any name here, then make the last user 4. Otherwise, then the last is 3. Why is that? Because I want to make sure the last row is 3 if they've just entered one specific name, or 4 if it's going to be here and here. So I think that's a little bit better, a little more customized, and that's more specific. Okay, so basically what I need to do is I need to differentiate. If the user has entered for both first name and last name, we're using the or feature. Or uses both rows 3 and 4. So we need to differentiate between those two. Okay, differentiate between those two. All right, so if sheet 1 does not equal name, that means the user is using the or feature, or first name or last name. Then the last criteria row is 4. Otherwise, the last criteria row is 3. Just right in here, the criteria row is either going to be 3 or 4. If it's 4, that means and, so this would be root. In this case, Fred and Fred. This, we need to use both. The criteria must be this or this, okay? 3 or 4. All right, continuing on. So we just need to set that dynamically, determines the last criteria row. Now what's the last row of the main data? The main data is using A999 and XL up. What that's going to do is going to get us our last row of data. To run our advanced filter, we need to know the last row of data. In this case, 17, but I need to make that dynamic as our data grows. So we'll do just that with this line. Next up, we're ready to run our advanced filter. It's going to start out with column A2. 2 is our header of our main data in sheet 2. We need to include that header row. Our last row is K, and then we're going to use our last row, which is dynamic. Going to run that advanced filter. We want that information copied over to another location, right? We don't want to filter in place. We want to copy over. I want to copy all that data over to right here. So we're going to use XL filter copy. That's going to bring the data here into a different area. Next up, I want to set the criteria range. It starts out at M2 and all the way through AB, and the last criteria row, that dynamic row, 3 or 4 would be the criteria row. M2, what is that? Let's take a look at that real quick. Our criteria, of course, is going to start out at M2, must include the headers as well, all the way over to AB, and then either 3 or 4, depending upon the type of filter we're doing. Okay, so moving on, we understand that. And where do we want that data copied? I want it copied all the way from AD through AN2. I want it copied, in this case, we're just going to use the header row to copy. We want to copy here AD2 all the way through AN2. Copy that. That's where the results, we want the results to appear right here. Okay, so, and then unique equals true or false, probably. In case we have duplicate records, we can keep this false. If you want only unique records, make it true. Either way, that's up to you and based on the data type that you have. Next up, I want to know the last results row. Why is that important? Well, it's important because I need to bring this data over, and I also need to check to make sure there actually is data. If there is no data, for example, if there's no data, we need to make sure, here there's no data. So if there's no data, in this case, there's no data. So I need to run a check. If the last results row is less than 3, in this case it is, then do not copy and then skip. I want to skip copying over any data because there is no data to copy over here. This table would remain blank. So we need to run a check on that too. But the first thing I want to do before I do that is I want to determine the last row. We can use AD. The last row would be AD99 and XL up. And we do that in the code right here. The last result row is AD and then use 99 and XL up. This is going to determine the last results row. And we just need to run one check. If the last results row is less than 3, then what do we want to do? Then I want to go to no results. What's that going to do? It's going to skip this one line of code. It's going to skip that and go right here. What does this one line of code do? This one line of code copies over the results. So the last thing we have to do is take whatever results are here, and let's clear the filter. Take whatever results are here and bring them over in here. So if we run another filter, let's just run another filter here. Going to take these results right here, all the way from AD3 to AN, and we're going to copy them over to here, to D9 all the way through N12. But we're not going to use copy and paste. That's a little bit slower. What I'm going to use is value to value. So basically what I want to do in one line of code, I want to see D9 all the way through N and the last row. In this case, it's 12. But how do I know the last row? Well, I know this last row is 6. So how do we get from 6 to 12? Well, we just add 6. So we know if the last row here is 6, then the last row here is 12. All we need to do is add 6. So D9 through N and the last row plus 6 equals AD3 to AN in the last row. And that's just what I did inside VBA. Let's take a look at that. Sheet 1, D9, N in the last results row plus 6 equal dot range because we've already defined sheet 2 up here. AD3 through AN in the last results row, copy over the results. That's it. That's all we have to do. It's a very, very simple advanced filter because we did data mapping using advanced filters. So it's a great way to really, really quickly get and write just a very little bit of code. All right, so the last macro is all we need to do is clear the filter. As you know, we run a macro on clear filter. And how do we do that? Well, I've assigned a macro to this. If we right click, now we're not right clicking the group. If we right click the group, we're not going to be able to see the macro that's assigned. However, if we right click any shape within the group and then we click assign macro, we can see that the macro that's been assigned is called clear filter. Just two macros, clear filter. So when I click on this button, it's going to clear that filter. What do I want to do? I want to clear all the data that's in here, and then whatever data is in this specific list, I want to bring it all over here. I want to bring it all here. Oh, I spelled customer list wrong. Let's fix that while we're at it. Customer list. Okay. So now we see we bring all that data over into the value. Okay, so that's all we need to do within the macro. So let's take a look at this clip. Again, we need to define the last row. Why do we need to do that? Because I need to know the last row of the original data. If I'm going to be bringing all the data over, I need to know the last row. So we need to define that once again, just as we did. The last row is sheet 2A, 9A, and Excel app. That's going to be the last row of data. Now again, all we need to do is once again add 6. D9 and the last row plus 6, just as we did, equals sheet 2, but this time it's A3 through K. Why A3? Because this is our first row of original data, A3. K is our last row. So all we're going to do is going to copy this to the last row and bring it over into the values. So this brings over all the original data back into the table. And next up, I want to copy over the default text, right? When we clear the filter, I not only want to bring the back data, but I want to bring all these back to their original point. So when I clear it, I want to bring all these back to the original text. Well, a great way to do that, I could use VBA to add the text here, but that would be a lot of code writing. An easy way to do it is to have the code here, to have all the text here, just as and then just copy and bring this data over, just the values, not the formats. Just bring the values right back here. That's a really quick way of doing it. So that's exactly what I did in VBA. Sheet 1, D7 through N8, that is our range, equals sheet 1, W7 through AH8. Again, let's look through that. D7 through N8 equals what? It equals W7 through AH8. That brings all the values, value to value, remember, not copying formats, only value to value. It's going to bring those values right in here. And of course, there's nothing here, and just as well as there's nothing here. So it's not going to affect it at all. All right, so that brings our values in. And next up, what I want to do is I want to clear any non-formula criteria. Non-formula, what is that? That's in sheet 2. I want to make sure that we clear all of our criteria, but of course we don't want to clear these formulas. So I've colored them differently. We want to make sure that we keep those formulas. So we want to clear all these rows. It would be M3 through R4, U3 through V4, and of course Y3 through AB4. So I want to clear all those contents and get it ready for possibly the next filter. So we do that with just this line of code, M3 through R4, U3 through V4, and Y3 through AB4. This clears all the data, all the non-formula criteria. All right, the only other feature that we haven't shown you is the ability to use conditional formatting. If you'll notice that when I type these in, you'll see the font color change back to its original font, but when it contained a colon, it's using the italicized and gray font. Well, how do we do that? That's simple conditional formatting. If we go into the home, conditional formatting, manage rules, we'll see that we're just using one conditional format, and that is if the cell containing a colon. In that case, I want to do a special format. What is that format? Well, the format's using an italicized and gray font. So that means any cell that contains a colon is going to be italicized and used as a gray font. And you'll see that that conditional formatting applies. If we tab over, we'll see that that applies to all of our cells that contain those colons. So that's pretty easy, just with simple conditional formatting. That is how we were able to get that automatically to show. So when a user types in, it looks different, and when it's in the default, it also looks different. All right, that is exactly how we did. Just a very, very simple macros, very simple, but very, very powerful. I hope you like this training. Feel free to download this workbook. I'll include the links down in the description. Of course, if you do want, I've got over 100. In fact, I think I've got a 20 workbook bonus, so 120 workbooks for just $37. That helps us pay for these free trainings, so I hope you enjoy it. Go ahead and pick that up if you like. The mentorship program starting hopefully this month. I'm trying to get all of the work done. As you can see, it's a massive type of scope here. If you look at the scope, it's massive. This is what we're going to be training on. I'm going to be training on an incredible software application. You're going to learn how to create your own applications. We're going to create your own so you can sell your own applications and create passive income for yourself. So I hope you'll join that mentorship program when it launches this month. All right, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate your likes, comments, and your shares. Have a great day. Thank you.